Hello, my name is John Maddox. I'm in Group Asia, and our study was sexual violence. Well, what is sexual? What is sexual violence? According to the National Sexual Violence Research Center, sexual violence is defined by someone that forces or manipulates someone else into unwanted sexual activity without their consent. And consent is considered voluntary and must be agreed upon by both parties. Reasons that someone may not be able to concede includes fear, age, illness, disability, or the influence of drugs or alcohol. And there are many forms of sexual violence, such as rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, and many more. So, who are the largest violators? Well, this image was taken from the Thomson Reuters Foundation annual poll, in which experts from this foundation conducted a survey that highlighted 6 key areas for women that included healthcare, discrimination, cultural traditions, sexual violence, non-sexual violence, and human trafficking. And this map just indicates which is the most dangerous place for women to live. Strangely, yeah, I didn't see South Africa or Egypt on the list, even though their sexual violence rates are just as high or more than the number one country, which was India. I will not go through the entire list, but I would just like to highlight India and the United States. So, India. Well, in 2018, India's National Crime Records Bureau reported around 340,000 crimes against women, including around 40,000 rape cases. That resulted, in around over 100 sexual assaults reported to the police every day. And this was large in part because of the high and dense population that India has. They are second in population, second most in population at 1.3 billion, and women and children are more susceptible to human trafficking, forced labor, and sex slavery. Well, why doesn't anything happen? The criminal justice system, the government, they don't care. They don't do anything about it. They don't believe that sexual violence is an issue. Rather, they think they'd rather treat the issue as the norm and don't make any changes. It's just part of life in India, I guess. That's how they feel. And figure 6, this is the protesting in 2012 of a girl being gang raped on a public transit bus. There was a large protest in the capital Delhi, and which thousands of people stood in protest. So, what about the US? Well, in that same poll, the United States was ranked third in sexual violence. And according to Rape, Abuse, and Incest Nation Network, every 73 seconds an American is sexually assaulted. And there are many types of victims, younger people being at the highest risk, and then you can see in the figure that young adults is the majority of sexual assault victims. Women and girls are victims, men and boys, college students. We had the Michigan State incident a couple years back. Transgenders, Native Americans, prisoners, and military members. And I would like to take a moment and say it's not only women that are affected by sexual violence. I mean, true, majority are women, but men are subjected to sexual violence as well. Sexual coercion against men and boys does occur, it's just not as often. And then we have cases like prison, where forced sex occurs regularly among inmates in order to establish hierarchies of respect and discipline. So, what can we do? Well, for India's case and other countries, there's a lack of women in office. Government in India is ran like a patriarchy, with men being in most control, and having more women would create better laws and protection for women in India. And the US has been making changes. They've been spreading awareness, and even though the US still needs more women in office, at least the US is improving in that area. And I have a small figure here that explains, stopping sexual violence is possible if we can do a couple of different things. Promote social norms that protect against violence, teach skills to prevent sexual violence, providing opportunities to empower and support girls and women, create more protective environments for our citizens, and support survivors to lessen harm. Now let's talk about some of the treaties that protect this human right. First one, International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, documented in 1965. States, all human beings are equal before the law and are entitled to equal protection of the law against any form of discrimination. So this was created to break racial barriers. Racial differentiation is scientifically false. Racial barriers is repugnant to any ideals of human society. Under Articles 4 and 5, it protects all individuals of acts of violence, including sexual violence, disregarding any form of discrimination. Well, who signed? Regarding that, each map I have here was taken from the United Nations Human Rights Organization website, and on this map it indicates that nearly the whole world signed this treaty, except Thailand, Malaysia, and North Korea. They didn't take any action. Next treaty, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, documented in 1979. This was created to promote women's rights, gives women the same opportunities as men, brings half of humanity back into focus, and this grants women the same privileges as men. This helps protect women against violence and gives women the same type of security and protection that men would get. Violence against women is recognized in international law as a violation of human rights. And again, most of the world signed this treaty. Parts of Africa and the Middle East took no action. Next treaty, Convention on the Rights of the Child, documented in 1989. Now, this one was made to give equal rights to all members of a human family, now including children. The United Nations proclaims children are entitled to special care and assistance without any form of discrimination. And this gives them the equal rights as anyone else. And under Article 19, children are protected by all forms of physical or mental violence, including sexual abuse. So this gives them the same rights and protection as a man or a woman or anyone else. And well, who signed? No surprise here. Nearly the entire world signed off on this treaty to protect their children. Lastly, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, documented in 2006. This was made to give equal rights to persons with disabilities. It promotes and protects persons with disabilities with the same fundamental human rights and freedoms as everyone else. Under Article 16, persons with disabilities are protected against exploitation, violence, and abuse. So persons with disabilities are protected under the same security that men, women, children, and everyone else. Well, who signed? Common theme going on. Once again, most of the world signed this treaty. So, sexual violence through the years. Sexual violence is actually incredibly difficult to measure. Only reason being because victims don't always report to the police, because they're afraid or ashamed, or they're afraid from not being believed by the police. And numbers can't really show the true amount of acts, not only in the United States but in the entire world. And as the Bureau of Justice reports, from 2006 to 2015, there was really no significant changes in any part of the world. You can check that with the top figure. Numbers show that sexual violence has gone down. This was in the US, by the way. Numbers show that sexual violence has been going down since 1993. However, in the last decade, numbers have remained stagnant and not really unchanged. I mean, numbers might be down from 1993 due to the awareness of the issue, but the numbers are still incredibly high. And the figure on the bottom, this just describes the map and rapes at a rate of 100,000. Shockingly, South Africa and Sweden having the highest of rates. So, are there any problems with enforcing this human right? Well, when I first heard this, I didn't think there would be, but unfortunately the world is not that simple. Survivors are usually often met with more issues, such as the police may not recognize the issue, they may accuse the survivor of lying and may prosecute them for false reporting. Survivors may be ostracized by their community. They may be denied employment, education, support, or housing. Another issue would be the abuse of this right. There are some people like that. Accusers may lie, and they have several motivations that behind their actions, such as material gain, getting money, revenge, trying to get attention, or they just feel regret. Another issue is that some countries may not want more women in office, and as I described, one of the solutions would be to get more women in office, but countries like India may not want more women in office. And right now, the U.S. they're making strides to trying improving and spreading awareness regarding sexual violence. We have a month for it, so we try to spread it. However, unfortunately, other countries are not following the same example as us. So to summarize, for the United States case, the United States is making it a priority. They've been slowly changing and supporting survivors from sexual violence while trying to prevent the act from occurring. The range chart shows and reports that the number of sexual violence have been going down, but again, this doesn't show the true story. Not every victim has reported the crime, so numbers are difficult to judge. And as well, the treaties that are meant to protect this human right were all signed by most of the world, yet this issue consists, like all the maps, that the whole world signed off on these treaties, but governments like India tell the public how disastrous these acts of violence are, but they refuse to comply. So looking at the treaties again, most of the world signed them off, but that these treaties are meant to protect people from these violent acts, yet these acts just continue. In India's case, some of the notable cases at least, yeah, it's great. Some of the accused were arrested and put to the death penalty. Well, that's all well and good, but that still does not solve the issue. Governments need to act before the events of sexual violence, not after the event. And in conclusion, the US sets the example of what other countries should start doing. We cannot fully prevent sexual violence, but we can at least try to stop it from happening. And these are all the sources that I used for my presentation, and thank you for listening.